is often called the new currency, but without trust, that currency is of little value. Today, India stands at a pivotal junction. We're not just regulating privacy, we're architecting one of the world's most ambitious digital trust frameworks with the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the DPDP, at its core. Hello and welcome to this special podcast of nasscom Insights. My name is Ketaki Karnik and I head Research and Insights at nasscom. In this episode, we decode the DPDP Act and explore how it shifts the narrative from compliance to competitive advantage and opportunity. To discuss this, I am joined by Ashish Aggarwal, Vice President and Head of Public Policy at nasscom. Ashish leads the industry's engagement with policymakers on digital trade, data governance, AI, taxation, and platform regulation. With over 2 decades of experience across government advisory, industry, and entrepreneurship, he has played a crucial role in shaping India's digital policy landscape. Ashish, welcome to this podcast and thank you for making the time.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Thank you. So Ashish, let's just dive straight in. The DPDP Act is now operational and it shifts India's approach from basic privacy to mandated trust. In your opinion, what is the single biggest value addition that this offers to the Indian tech industry and how does it strengthen our global position as a digital hub? Just related to that, how does the DPDP Act compare vis-a-vis the GDPR or the US standards? Are we simply aligning with the world or are we setting new global South standards?
Thanks, Ketaki. So DPDP is really a significant step for India. Earlier we had the Information Technology Act, which was regulating sensitive personal data. Now we really have a fit-for-purpose act, if you would call, for the digital economy. And the act itself has been, formulated over the years. So I started my journey in nasscom in 2018, and that's when the initial report from Justice Shri Krishna came in, and it has been a very consultative process. So when you think about this law and what value it delivers for the larger tech industry, and why tech industry? Because everything is tech today. So I think given a large part of the digital ecosystem is around trust, and so much of our personal data is getting processed, I think this is the law which is seeking to enable that protection for the users and also provide that industry that mechanism to be able to actually process the data, because the true value of data lies in processing. Now to your second part in terms of how does it really fit into the global scheme of things. So in some sense, India started out to formulate its data protection law. I think the single objective was, can we get it right for India? And I think to some extent the act reflects the realities and context of India. And within that, I think broadly it is compatible with the core principles when we think about purpose specification, data limitation in terms of processing, in terms of the consent, and in terms of accountability. All the core principles which you have globally, they are part of this law, and we feel it is fairly interoperable. At the same time, there are some things which are uniquely Indian. So for example, we are very strict about how we think about children data processing. Now in other countries, for the purpose of data processing, they do think of it in flexible terms to say that, okay, a child is a child from that context only till maybe 13, 14 or 16. But in India, we are very strict about it. We want everybody's data below 18 to be processed with certain guardian consent and so on and so forth. We are also very clear that in order to implement this law effectively, we would like to catch hold of the key entity from a liability perspective. Now that design is not universal. So for example, the liabilities in our law are more focused towards data fiduciaries and not processors. Processors are indirectly regulated. So that's something different. We also have some unique features from a data principle, which is the person. We have something called right to nominate. Which is not seen in many other parts of the world. So I think broadly there are many things which makes us well aligned with the global, but there are certainly some unique aspects which are Indian innovations to this. And I think the biggest one is around consent framework, because given the heterogeneity of our population, it is very important that the consent is meaningful and people are able to track and manage their consent. So we have the consent manager framework to be able to do that. And of course, happy to talk about more in detail as part of this conversation.
Thank you, Ashish. So I want to, deep dive on one of the aspects that you just mentioned, which is the consent manager, one of the key principles. What kind of opportunities does this open up for SMEs, for startups, for tech innovators who are looking to maybe merge scale with trust?
So one of the things is that we have been processing data even before this law has come in, right? So the first thing that it does is that now every organization needs to really think about it, that do they have a consent system in place where they are really being able to inform the user and process the data for the purpose for which they have articulated the reason. On top of it, now we are thinking about this consent framework architecture. So what does that mean? So typically consent traditionally is managed between the user and the person who is taking that information. Now in India, what we have created is a consent manager framework which sits between these two entities, and therefore that consent manager acts on behalf of the user and is able to process the consent and manage it. And the way I conceptualize this is that as a user, I would be able to track and manage my consents across various services and products which I am using, and I would have the ability, which is what the law demands, the ability to withdraw and manage my consent in the same way I originally gave it. Now from a business perspective, I think the opportunity is to incorporate this framework in their business so that the business continues in a frictionless manner and generates greater trust for the user. From an opportunity point of view, this is entirely a technological enabled design. So there are, like we have a thriving market for payment processors, payment aggregators who sit between the merchant and the users to enable instant payment, seamless payment, fast payments. So how can we now think of this as an opportunity to manage consent in a similar manner across industries, across use cases? So I think this is an evolving opportunity. The proof will lie in the days to come when people will also take it up, because one of the question mark is also to think about what is the business viability of these models. How will these models survive as a standalone model, or will they be clubbed in with something else? So I think some of these things are ahead of us, but this is definitely an exciting opportunity.
Very much, and much to look forward in the future. Let me now just maybe shift focus to the individual, the common citizen. As you can imagine, people are worried about spam calls, unauthorized tracking, unauthorized sharing of information. From a practical viewpoint, how does the DPDP Act protect citizens, and what are the kind of rights that citizens can start exercising immediately?
So one of the things you would have noticed is that since this law has been under discussion and it got enacted in 23, it's just being operationalized now, is that there is an organic growth in awareness. Earlier, people never used to talk in terms of my consent and my privacy protection, and I have not authorized this processing. Now there is a whole lot of awareness. So I think that's the first win, that people are going to be increasingly more and more aware about their rights. Now what are those rights? I think our law is very heavy on consent. So making sure that the user has consented and he's aware or she's aware of the purpose for which the data is going to be processed, I think that's very important. And after that, the user is empowered through this law to be able to withdraw the consent, to ask for who all this data has been shared for from a processing point of view, and also to make sure that the data is being only used for the purpose for which is requested. And the stiff penalties, they go up to 250 crores. So we as an industry are hoping that in this journey we'll be able to implement the processes so that the penalties don't actually have to come into the play. And I think the data protection board, which is now being set up, will also have a huge role initially to ensure that there is a smooth transition and there is a good quality guidance which comes into the industry, so that the intent of the law is implemented both in letter and spirit. So I think there is quite a few things which are going right for the consumer, hopefully down the road.
Ashish, then, jumping onto the other side of the table, we talked of the common citizen. Let's talk of the government. There's a lot of conversation going on at the moment about the government app, Sanchar Sathi. What are the expectations from the government given that the DPDP is now in force?
Yeah, so come to think of it, right, this is also new for the government, and it is to the government's credit that the law actually applies to the government also. In that sense, that's pretty welcome. But then there are also broad exemptions for the government, and the most broad use case is around national security and so on and so forth. So this is where the balancing test will actually play out. I think it is the right intent of the government to be able to trace and enforce various laws using the digital ecosystem, and that's where the industry is an ally to the government. But I think on the flip side, it is going to raise concerns around privacy, around surveillance, and so on and so on. And that is what we are seeing as play out. So I think this is going to evolve, and hopefully government will get it right in terms of putting together their own SOPs, checks and balances, because ultimately they have to ensure that they give that trust to the citizens that what they are doing is proportionate, well-meaning, and is fit for purpose. So I think this is just an example of, and probably you'll see some more of these things play along as we mature into an ecosystem.
From government, let's move on to boardrooms. Again, India is about to handle one of the largest volumes of data in the world. Under this law, again, how do you think CXOs and board members should think about data liability? What governance mechanism should they put in place?
So effectively, I think this is a great opportunity. So we have seen in some of the other economies and the initial rollout, firms which take the early step forward, they end up becoming ambassadors for data protection and trust, and usually government is very keen to highlight those success stories. So I think one feedback for the CXOs is take the lead. You anyway have to do it, and do it well, and probably create a brand differentiator for yourself, and as you enhance consumer trust. The second thing is to treat it as compliance, which you must, but as I said, that will be a lowest bar. And when you are thinking about compliances, I think it is important that the data gap analysis and the existing data that you are using, the data mapping that you need to do, all of that should already be underway. And if that is not the case, then you need to really double click on that. And I think then be open, because the law is a very principle based law. It's not very, very prescriptive. So it is going to hopefully rely on the adequacy of measures that you have taken with the right intent. So where where you are passing through that phase where you feel there is a lack of clarity and there is lack of that final detail of what I need to do, then I think industry must go and set standards and examples of what is right. And hopefully those are the things which will settle as good practices and processes. So I think that's the journey for at the board level, at the CXOs, and we as NASSCOM are committed to support this for our industry and for the larger ecosystem.
If we can just zoom back out, India, there's a lot of talk about Viksit Bharat. How does DPDP contribute to India's growth story? Does it actually position India globally as a responsible, people-centric digital transformation hub? And crucially, I think you mentioned this earlier, but what next for NASSCOM?
Right. So that our industry is $280 odd billion close in terms of revenue. We are probably going to be close to touching 300 billion. So, and we have done all of this without a data protection law. So the kind of trust and faith that the world has seen over the last 40 years is probably irreplaceable, right? Now on top of it, you have a law which actually provides further protections and privacy concerns are being addressed. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to show that now we are ready in terms of playing our greater role in the entire digital economy, and from an export perspective, and also from an inviting inward investment, and also for the domestic industry to really grow in a way where the privacy and data protection is built in from start is going to be critical. But ultimately it will really be seen in terms of how well this enables data processing to actually flourish while keeping the safeguards. So I think net big positives.
So really, I think we're seeing the DPDP Act as not a hindrance, but very much a springboard to India's growth story. Thank you very much, Ashish. I think, your insights and your explanation helped decode all the legal complexity. Thanks again on behalf of NASCOM Insights. So, Ashish, this was really very useful for me. I think, it actually demystified the DPDP Act for me. How was your experience?
So this is the first time I'm doing it as part of a NASCOM internal podcast, and particularly on this topic. I think it's a good conversation, and you made it very easy for me. But thank you. Yeah, fantastic. Enjoyed it.
And I hope, for the rest of you who are watching us, you found this useful, insightful, and something that, at least a few nuggets which you can take away and implement in your own organizations and lives. For more such really interesting deep dives into what's happening in India's tech landscape and global landscape, please do subscribe to the NASCOM Insights LinkedIn channel and follow us on X for real-time updates as well as in-depth podcasts such as these. Till next time, stay safe and stay data smart.